Hi there. Believe it or not, it is actually possible for me to make a stream not about NeoVim. Crazy, I know. Especially considering the last couple of streams were all NeoVim based. It's not really my intention, I guess. It's not like, oh, this is a NeoVim only channel. I was reading so much docs. I just had to talk all about it. But this time, I spent, I haven't even counted, but it's like ridiculously many hours in something else. I've been annoyed very concretely about the number row on my keyboard. It's not special at all, it's not like wrong in some sort of way. You probably have the same exact number row. Like, it's normal. I had a gripe with it still though. And the gripe was based on the fact that I need to reach for the number row. You may call that a stretch, like, oh come on now, it's like, it's right here. It's not even the function key row, it's not the home and arrow keys, etc. What do you mean you have to reach for it? But yeah, I have standards that high, I guess. With something... Where the fuck? Interesting. With something that happens so often in NeoVim, we need numbers all the time. Basically the number one tip. If you needed to know one tip about using Vim, it would be to use relative line numbers and use relative jumps. It is the most important tip for NeoVim ever. It is vastly important. So what you end up doing very commonly is using line numbers. You constantly type in, 10 up and then 11 down, 7 up, 8 down, fucking 22 down. You do this all the time. So what ends up happening is that I end up reaching for the number row really commonly. Considering how often operations are line-wise, I need to touch the numbers all the time. And it is actually kind of a lot of movement, especially if I'm like trying to really chill and my hands are like in an incorrect position for what it's worth. Reaching for the number row is kind of ass, which is why I made a couple of adjustments. Let me spill the beans. I mean, you're looking at them right now. I made 2 extra special modifiers. First of all, when I hold down tab, and tab has been remapped for me for a long time, it used to be escape. When I hold down tab, now I can enter numbers using tab. So I hold down tab, and as I'm going to be pressing different keys while holding down tab, look at the output in the chat and you'll basically see what I did. P, M, comma, dot, J, K, L, U, I, O. What I did basically is I created myself a numpad that I do not have to reach to the other country for. A numpad that is right on the home row. Don't even need to move for it. I need to move for tab, and it's technically not like super perfect ideal, but it's about as good as I could get it. On the other hand, okay, sure, now I'm not reaching like forward, up to reach the number row, but now I need to hold down a whole entire modifier to get numbers. You might argue that this is not worth it, which is an interesting point, but I guess for me, in terms of comfortability, not reaching is so much more important than pressing modifiers usually. Which is why, in the past, caps lock plus HJKL are arrow keys. I have not touched my actual arrow keys in a while since I made that remap. I literally do not ever touch them. Because pressing an extra modifier is actually more, well, it's better for me than reaching anywhere. And now I get to have the same thing about the numbers. What that gives me is that, say I'm in new Vim, the place that's going to be using numbers the most commonly. Now, instead of first reaching my left pinky to 1, then my right pinky to 0, and then kind of bringing myself back a bit to press J to go 10 down, so that. I mean, it's pretty fast, but I'm going to get into why this isn't about speed. Or I can hold down Tab, MPJ. I'm obviously not used to it yet. As you can see, I'm very not used to it. Incredibly. But as I'm going to be using it, I'm going to eventually get used to it so much that it's going to be weird to be using the actual number row. It's usually how it goes, even with remaps that seem kind of ridiculous at first. Yeah. So, speed, effectiveness. The number one thing that Vim is usually sold for, you could say. The number one thing that people advertise Vim with. Why are there 2 Ks? There shouldn't be. Why are there 2 kitties? That's false, by the way. Confusion. Okay, well, whatever. So, if you look at the actual speed, this, pretty damn fast, right? And then this. For sure, I'm not used to it yet. I'll speed up for sure. But at the end of the day, it's probably still going to be slower. Let me dispel a bit of a myth for you. While Vim does provide you with more speed, I remember that in about a week, or maybe even less honestly, I was able to get faster than my previous editor, like without Vim. So will most likely get a speed benefit, and a pretty significant one. But as you get more and more into Vim and start doing more and more stuff, you notice how often it is almost overcomplicated. Where sometimes, yeah, it would be faster to use some feature of VS Code, or it would be better. So it's not always that Vim is absolutely and always faster. Not necessarily. What Vim is good at, though, is providing comfortability. It's a very comfortable editor. And the more you get used to it, the more comfortable it is. First of all, it can feel like home, but I'm more so talking about hand movements. Because of the configurability, you can change a lot of the more annoying hand movements, like Control D, Control U, which I have remapped to instead be on uppercase L and uppercase H. So what ends up happening is that you get a lot more ergonomic hand movements, and let's forget about speed. Let's say that somehow magically VS Code and Vim are equal in speed. The ergonomics are going to be better in Vim. I find it hard to make up a scenario where that is not the case. So I'm using the same exact type of idea in this remap of numbers. Sure, it might actually be slower, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for comfortability, for ergonomics. Okay, well, holding down tab and then pressing numbers like that maybe it even isn't ergonomic, but it comes into play once you start combining those numbers with other stuff, because I press tab J to say 4 and then immediately J. All I needed to do here is to release tab. There was barely any movement from me entering the number to me pressing J and going to that direction. Well, on the other hand, if I use the number row, first I have to stretch out my middle finger to 4, then I press it, and then with the other hand I press J. Not a very good comparison, because that's really not too bad. But when it does get bad is 6. 6 is terrible. 6 is so bad. First of all, it is the most annoying number to reach. I'm not gonna say it's the most annoying key to reach, because that's going to be probably backspace, honestly. Yeah, most definitely backspace is most annoying to reach. I'm obviously excluding the function key row and home and arrow keys, etc. Those are obviously even worse. Forget about the numpad. But 6 is up there. 6 is very up there in how fucking annoying it is to reach. So you need to stretch out your hand in a very uncomfortable position, and with your index finger, I'm actually holding my hand there and starting to hurt, which is hilarious. It at the very least proves the point to me, which is kind of the most important thing that I want to try to do here, because I spent a lot of hours on this and I want to excuse them in my own head, you know? So you press 6, and then with that same index finger you have to go back to J. That is time lost, and that is ergonomics lost. Hi, I'm Zakir. Yeah. On the other hand, if I press tab L J, I didn't have to move fucking anywhere. I just need to move my pinky to tab, and isn't this amazing? So while individually getting some number, some singular number, might actually be slower than me using the number row, the actual benefit that I'm getting from here is being able to combine the movement, combine me getting this number and then immediately using it with something like J, for example. So that's why I find this to be amazing. But still, we have the issue, an even bigger issue, I would argue, of special characters. For how often it is used, the caret is ridiculous to reach. Actually, forget it. Exclamation mark is even worse. Exclamation mark is terrible. And I despise equals with my soul. And minus. They're so bad. They're first we start with 0 that our pinky finger needs to take care of, then minus, then equals, then supposedly backspace, which is simply impossible, and that's why I got it remapped a while ago. And that's not all. It also has to handle P, left bracket, right bracket, backslash, semicolon, apostrophe, enter, fucking slash, right shift, right control, right alt, right windows. My fucking poor pinky finger. Why does it have so much responsibility? It is insane. So, the special characters still have the issue of you have to reach for them, but now you also have to press shift. And some special characters, like the dash, is used very, very often. Like, for example, on the command line. Let me actually bring chat here as well. Boom. So it's used very, very often. You might be typing in echo and then some flag. Or actually, let's do git show, some flag, a name only. And I'm using my remapping that I'm obviously gonna get to. But usually, this is a fucking chore to type in. I have to reach all the way with my pinky in a very awkward hand position up and then come back. See? Once again, the moving from getting the thing, moving from there to the motion that you want to do after. I do name, and now I have to fucking reach there again. I reach out, boom, and now I need to reposition my hand to press only. I don't know, to me, it was always like, this sucks. This sucks so bad, especially considering how much I use the shell, how much I use the terminal. Dashes are so common, yet I'm so, like, averse to using options on the command line because I would rather not, especially -n. -n is such a common flag, but to get it, you have to extend your pinky up and then move your index finger awkwardly down. It is terrible. I hate it. I hate it so much. So I solved that issue as well. But now by using caps lock. So caps lock H is grave, which is the backtick. Caps lock Alt. Notice how I'm not using shift here. Caps lock Alt H is shift grave, meaning the tilde. So this thing. The reason why I'm using Alt is because, at least for me, it has always been massively like the easiest to reach shift. The easiest to reach modifier, and one of the most comfortable ones. Almost above shift. It would be if shift wasn't used so commonly, I guess. But the reason why I'm using it here also is because, say I want to type in the backtick, and now I want to also type in the tilde. My pinky finger is currently on caps lock, and I need to press shift somehow. Well, using right shift and then trying to reach out for H is very not ergonomic. It's like, ouch, you know? So what I have to do now is switch my pinky finger to shift and now press with my, how's it called? Ring finger, caps lock, which is kind of a lot. If I'm using Alt instead, I don't have to do any movements from caps lock. I can just add Alt onto it. So that's why this decision is this. The reason why I even started doing all of this basically keyboard layout, but not exactly because I'm using software to like change this rather than doing it on the hardware level or on the kernel level or anything like that. The reason why I started all of this remapping is because I was like extremely annoyed with the positioning of the backslash and the pipe character. Escaping anything is really painful. That's how it has always felt to me. If I need to enter a \n, the movements that I have to do are ridiculous. So I always disliked it when I had to escape something. And if you know anything about Vim patterns, you know how stupid they are. If you need a group, like a regex-like group, you have to do this. Still getting used to the new mappings. So if I'm kind of like awkward and slow, that's why. You have to do this. Then sure, you could use \v to turn on like regex mode, and you could do this, but \v has its own thingies. I've used it for a really long time, but overall I wouldn't say I recommend it. I tried really hard, but at the end of the day I think it's the best decision to get used to default Vim patterns. That's probably a topic for another video if I collect enough content about patterns. So in Vim patterns you need to do a lot of escaping. And when you're trying to use patterns interactively, that sucks. If your backslash is all the other way on the moon, reaching for it time and time again is incredibly annoying. And alright, maybe you're like trying to escape \a, for example. That's pretty easy, because you only move the right hand and then immediately you can type in A, and here you go. But we also are forgetting that you now need to reposition your right hand, which also takes time and is bad. But that's not even the common situation. The common situation is something like \n, which is bad. Like, you cannot, at least I can't, my hand isn't big enough, which is a good thing, but not here. Like, I cannot stretch from \n to n. Impossible. The common situation, once again in Vim patterns, is that you do a \, and then %. Well, now you fucking have to move your right hand to right shift first and then do %. And it's all like terrible. I've tried multiple different ways to remap \. None of them felt good. Matter of fact, I already used this mapping before, and it didn't feel good previously. But that's only because it felt like alienated. It was the only special character on caps lock and everything else was on shift. So then switching modifiers didn't feel good. Well, I guess I haven't said this, surprisingly. Now all of my special characters are on caps lock. Pretty sure I don't press shift to get any special characters. Yeah. Voila! So now, my experience of typing in something like \$V, which is incredibly useful in the substitute command. So let's try it out, I guess. I'll even show you its effect. Let's select slash and do S. And now I want to search for slash and replace it, but only in my selection. that is what backslash %sign capital V is for. So my experience of typing this in now is I hold down caps lock, slash, remembering where %sign is, M, I was wrong, N. So I'm still like pressing N after a backslash, but because it's so much closer, it is pretty free. I can very comfortably press slash first and then N while still holding down the modifier. It's actually pretty comfortable. Something that would otherwise be really fucking annoying is now comfortable. Imagine? And then I switch my right hand to right shift to press V. Since I was already there, I don't really need to move my hand that much. And here I am. Now I can type in slash and remove it. I have to declare I have the G default option set to true. And because of that, the S, the substitute command, automatically uses the G flag. So it looks as if I don't have this option set and is just getting the first match, but this is actually not true. Here, when I pass the G flag again, to make sure it goes into default behavior, it's still only grabbing the first slash. So this is what backslash %sign capital V is for. It's very, very useful, like incredibly. All right. Let's go next. Let me do the same thing that I did for numbers so that you can visualize to an extent where everything is. So I'm going to be entering the special characters in chat and saying what like key I'm pressing. So I'm holding down caps lock, N, M, comma, period, slash, H, J, K, L, Y, U, I, O, P, left bracket, right bracket. But we're also missing a few. That's because they're kind of hidden. So caps lock Alt H, still holding Alt, slash turns into a pipe. There's probably something else that I'm forgetting currently. Or not. So basically I can enter every single special character that you usually can use on a QWERTY keyboard, but without having to reach for the number row or without having to reach for the backslash key, which is in a ridiculous position. I wish my spacebar wasn't 3 continents long and instead just had a bunch of extra modifiers I could use, because ideally the most strong finger should be used the most often on a keyboard. But that is not true. Thumbs are barely used. You maybe use one thumb for space sometimes. It is very disappointing. So remember how I mentioned how the flow of numbers is very important? How after you press some number, now you can press J quickly, for example, right? Well, this applies to special characters as well. And it's a very big part of the reason why my mappings are how they are right now. So on tab, I have numbers, and on caps lock, in the same kind of keys, I have special characters. So what I can do, for example, is say tab plus L is 6. I quickly and fairly easily move my pinky to caps lock, start holding it down, and I press J. And I just did 6 plus. By the way, if you didn't know, minus goes to the previous line, but on the start of the line, and plus does the opposite. It goes forward, but to the start of the line. Just J and K don't do that, as you can see. Previously, I would never fucking use them. Okay, maybe that's a lie. I used them sometimes, but I didn't use them nearly as often as I should be using them because they are so inconvenient to press. So, because I had to reach all over north to get minus, it just wasn't worth it. And for plus, you need to hold down the modifier, so they're not even equivalent mappings. They're very annoying. But for me now, they're equivalent mappings. I held the same exact amount and the same exact modifier for both of them, so you can actually interactively use them. I can look at this line, for example, and be like, I want to go to that line, but to the start of the line. I do tab, M, comma, I switch to caps lock, K. And because I'm using J for plus and K for minus, the muscle memory is already there. Oh, I just want to go up. Oh, I just want to go down. But with a bit of a different semantic. See, when you create your keyboard layout, let's call it that, you get to decide where what makes the most sense. And considering how much I use Vim, it made sense to make mappings that worked well for Vim. Yeah, so I find this incredibly cool. Then, I also always found it annoying how to go to the start of the line, you need to use caret. You could also use 0 technically, but usually that will not be what you actually want. So you'll generally be using caret. And then you need to use the $sign to go to the end of the line. The issue here is that they are on different shifts. You need to be using 2 different shifts to get each one of those characters. I mean, generally, you don't need to jump around here and there. So maybe it's a null point, like, oh, you don't need to be able to access them both quickly, one after another, which is, yeah, like, it's super fair. But for some reason, it makes me feel incredibly good being able to access both of them at the same time very quickly. I think it's mostly for stimming. It's basically entirely for stimming. Going to the start and whoops, wrong modifier. Going to the start and end of a line feels like a very good stim to me for some reason. I also do this very often, but start and end of the line feels better for me for some reason. And now I get to have that because the caret is on caps lock I, and $sign is on caps lock O. They're very close together. I know what's the greatest thing. Actually, that greatest thing is gone now, but basically, in the past, caps lock plus I was home, and caps lock plus O was end. The semantics are very, very similar, so we already have the muscle memory for them, which is very, very nice. Then another pair is hash to find and go to the previous word at the cursor, and star, which is the same but forward instead of backward. They are on caps lock U for star and caps lock P for hash. You might be looking at this and saying like, hold up now, they're reversed now. What the hell? This is kind of confusing. I agree. I tried them out with U being a hash and P being star sign first, but then I noticed that making things italic was annoying on caps lock P, but worked really well for caps lock U. And then having hash on caps lock P made a lot of sense to me for some reason. It felt correct. The gravity of pressing hash felt appropriate. In case this is your first time here, I am very autistic, which you can probably tell now. Just how much detail these small thingies are to me. Now, something that I haven't like mentioned, I guess, variables and words and file names. I have a habit of making my file names not contain spaces if possible, because it makes them far easier to work with on the command line. Far may be an exaggeration, but they're kind of nicer if they don't have spaces. So the dash, aside from being go line up but at the start of the line, is also very commonly used in path names. And see how easy it is now for me to enter this. I don't need to travel to another dimension to reach dash. No, it's just on caps lock K. So it's in a very convenient position. And then if I move down to comma, I can make a variable with underlines. See how easy it is to enter for me? I guess you don't have a comparison. Let me give you a comparison. Variable. Well, I guess that should tell you everything you need to know. Because I fucked up. How did I close that window? Maybe I moved it. Let's try to find it. It's very possible that I just straight up closed it. Yep. Let's reopen it. I definitely wasn't here. Let's do 50%. Let's do, oh right, because I pressed the wrong thing. 50%. Nope, that's not percent. I'm not selling my idea very well by fucking up, but I'm just like trying to get used to it. Okay, let's do 70% now. For fuck's sake. Let's do 25%. 25%. Okay, we're somewhere where text is like more useful to look at. Actually, we were here, just remembered. Boom. Yeah, so let me give you an example. Let's do 2. Boom. I also have to point out, haven't slept in a while. I generally don't stream when I'm like this underslept and tired. Why are there 3Ks? Oh, I know why. Because I was fucking minimizing them, turns out. Huh. That's really funny. So I don't have a good UI for minimized windows because I felt I didn't need it. I felt that if I can't tell that I have a minimized window, it's a skill issue on my part. I still think so, but I do find it hilarious how it's biting my ass now. Okay, so let's redo this. Variable with underscores versus variable with underscores. I don't think you can really tell a difference, but to me, the difference is very clear in comfortability of entering those underscores. It's like night and day. Feels so much better. At first, when I started doing Rust and saw that the convention for variables was using underscores, I was like, god damn it, for fuck's sake. Because I come from AutoHotkey, where it's not like there is a consensus really, but I used camel case there for variables, and then C#. So I also used camel case there. And then I kind of had to switch with underscores. I was like, for fuck's sake, I don't want to enter underscores. Now this is not an issue whatsoever. It's so nice to enter those underscores. It's really good. Then we have our exclamation mark on caps M. I'm trans, and it is in the rule book to use exclamation marks really commonly. If you talk to me, like in text, you'll see me use them a lot. And the difference, the pure difference of the hand positioning and of movement, of moving to right shift 1 versus basically not moving at all to enter them is staggering. It is such a big difference. Then %, kind of got the bitter deal. I don't like pressing N very much, but it made the most sense for all the other keys to be in other positions, so % got N. N is still fine, all things considered. It's not B, it's not 6, it's not 5, but yeah. So how this is useful is pressing enter caps N. See how fast I was able to enter that? It's like crazy compared to enter shift. Well, I guess there's not much difference. Not much visible difference, but in terms of comfortability, it's way better. And then, remember how caps slash is backslash, and caps alt slash is pipe. Then similarly, caps dot is ampersand. So my condition and another or something is so much nicer to enter. It's so much neater. I like it a lot compared to the fucking hand fuckery I would have to do usually. It's amazing. So I think I have shown off of the remaps. Oh, I forget the least important and used one. Caps Y is at. I like Y. I like pressing Y actually a bit more than N. But N makes a bit more sense for %. So yeah, this character is like the least used character out of the all special characters that you can usually enter. But still, it's quite a bit nicer. It's actually so nice, in fact, that I might change execute macro back onto this, because right now for me it's Z apostrophe, so 2 characters. I might not, I'm not sure yet, but now it's possible, because in the past shift 2 is ridiculous. It's just too much for executing a macro. And then as a bonus, this is as a nice little like addition, caps alt apostrophe is long dash, the one which Unicode is 2014. Blammo. So yeah, long dash, because I use it very often in my linker, let's call it that. So here I have a bunch of links, and say I want to add another link. Maybe I just streamed, and what I do is say VOD, this is the name of the section of this link, the name of the stream, and now it's easier for me to enter this dash character. I used to use the compose sequence and then dash dash, and actually, hold up. It's a bit easier to type in now because the position of minus is way better. So maybe it's actually not as needed now, like this special mapping, but still, I have it. And then I enter the link. Voila! So all of this, but I also used to have remappings for the arrow keys, because I told you I don't use the actual arrow keys anymore. They moved. They used to be on caps lock HDKL. As you can see now, they're used by special characters. They are now, interestingly, on enter. Yes, I shit you not, I am using fucking enter as a modifier. And yes, also, this is like horrendous, but unfortunately this is what I have to do here in X remap. Yeah. I'm using enter as a modifier, so if I press enter alone, it just acts as enter. As you can see here, I'm just pressing enter, and it's acting as enter. But if I hold it down and then use other mappings, they turn into arrow keys. So S, D, F, G are arrow keys, Q, R is page up, page down, W, E is home end, and as a bonus, enter A enters my mouse mode. It toggles my mouse mode, the one that lets me move my mouse using my keyboard. You'd be surprised just how often I use this. You'd be terrified, actually. The reason why I have to do it this really stupid way is because I make it so enter alt acts as control alt. So I'm pressing, let me actually go to some sort of input. Let's type some words. So I hold down enter, alt, and then when I do S and G, it's as if I'm pressing control left, control right. Rather than having to reposition my hand in a very awkward way of enter control and then using, oops, forgot about this thing existing. Actually, forget about forgetting, I didn't know it existed. The switch to the previous channel thing. I'll need to learn that. Okay, whatever. So for something that you do so often, going word by word, I felt like having that on enter made a lot more sense. Or rather, having that on alt rather than control made more sense because of the positioning of enter. And then control enter acts like alt enter. So if I do control enter D, I go down. Whoops, that's whoops. Tip number 1 for streaming: do not open the fucking NSFW channel on stream. Okay, thank God it wasn't too bad there. But if you're excited about what was there just now, join the Discord server. The link is in the description, and ask me to give you access to the channel. That's hilarious. Stop to your comedy. Yeah, so basically alt acts as control and control acts as alt. Everything else is just normal. You just have to do all of this bullshit, which some time ago I asked ChatGPT to generate for me to make all of these mappings work correctly together. Not sure, well, when I will ever want to press 5 modifiers at once, but at least I am able to. Also, one thing that I haven't tried out is pressing left alt instead of right alt. Okay, yeah, I like right alt way better here. Which is strange, because usually my right alt is in a terrible position. Like, I never use it, even though I want to, because it's so, like, incredibly awful to press. But once I move my hand to enter, now it actually works surprisingly well. Yeah. So, that's it. Here are my new mappings. I'm very, very happy about them. I've tried many different combinations. I even considered making this a mode so that when I press tab, then keys become special keys and numbers, and when I press tab again, I go out of that mode. But then I realized that for something that I will want to do so often and maybe repeatedly, it makes absolutely no sense for me to be pressing 2 extra keys separately for a single character. It's ridiculous. So, boom, talked about that. Let's talk about virtual modifiers, because in the past I didn't realize how they work correctly. I thought that X-Remap didn't support the behavior of, oh, this acts as a modifier when you hold it, and if you just press it, it acts as a key. I thought that X-Remap didn't support this. Turns out it does, I just didn't understand how it works correctly. So now caps lock, when I hold it, is caps lock, and then it's used throughout the program. But when I press it alone, it is now escape. Escape used to be mapped on tab for me. I wanted it to be on caps lock the entire time in this kind of behavior, but I thought it was impossible, which is why I didn't do it. But now escape is finally on caps lock. So this is very, very good. And the positioning of escape on caps lock makes so much sense in my head. I was able to reteach myself the really strong muscle memory of tab really quickly, which I'm really like glad about. I'm glad that I don't need to reteach myself too harshly. which is the case with enter and arrow keys. They're still kind of unusual to me, as well as numbers and special characters. All of them I need to get used to. But escape was able to get very, very quickly, which is amazing. So yeah, basically, in your mod map, you can make a key. Doesn't have to be a modifier immediately. You can make a key act as a key when alone, or as a modifier when held. But to make, so see what I'm doing here. When caps lock is held, do caps lock. To make sure that it works correctly and as you expect, as a modifier, because caps lock is not a modifier by default, and neither is F14, you need to, remembering my old days, when I was trying my hardest to use Vim effectively while recording videos. Now it's the same case when I'm streaming with a new keyboard layout. Okay, so to make them act correctly, you have to specify them as virtual modifiers. What I'm doing here, so caps lock and F14. Tab always acts as a modifier, doesn't do anything on press, which is why I don't list it here, and it's used throughout the program. Yeah, would be cool to find a use case for a key for tab. Well, it would be reasonable to say, well, duh, place tab on it, obviously. But actually, so my tab is on caps F. And I've gotten so used to it, I actually prefer it, I think. If I pressed the actual tab key right now to insert tabs, or to do whatever else it might be, for example this, right? Also uses the tab character to select. If I was just pressing the key right now, it would feel, first of all, incorrect, and second of all, it feels not ergonomic, interestingly. As a key to be pressing, it feels not ergonomic. But as a modifier, it's okay, which is really weird. And then caps F feels way better. Huh, that's actually pretty surprising. Shift tab does nothing in Rofi. I thought it did. What is happening? Oh, right, I was pressing the wrong modifier. Imagine how many modifiers I now have to keep in track. I have 3 extra modifiers that I added. Insane. As I told at the beginning of the stream, kind of tired, so I'm I want to pick something that is reasonable to talk about next, to not completely burn out. Because I notice if I overstep my boundaries of burnout, I then, burn out. I spend way too much energy, and then I'm like a zombie, and then I don't want to stream anytime soon. I want to avoid that. I know that a lot of these has been here for a long ass time. I'll get to them eventually. Let's talk about triple decking Anki. I've done a couple of streams on Anki before already, and long story short, Anki is incredible, Anki is amazing, Anki is a big reason for all the knowledge about NeoVim and other stuff that I have. I heavily recommend it. If you have any information whatsoever that you want to remember long term, Anki is the way. It is incredible. Oh my god, holy fuck. The only thing that it takes from you is consistency because Anki is something that you need to do every day for it to be the most effective. But that's the TLDR of Anki. Have streams on it. Have a tutorial. Well, not me. Some guy has a tutorial on it that I watched the first time I was setting Anki up, and the second time when I came back to Anki and I was resetting it up. So the videos by Anking makes videos about Anki. So if you wanna like set up Anki, go watch his videos. I would usually also recommend the docs, but I kinda can't. I feel like Anki is actually very, 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 very confusing, and without a human to explain things, I don't think it's very viable. Okay, whatever. So what did I do in Anki? Why am I talking about Anki? I used to have around 7 decks. And decks let you divide your cards into nice little subsections. So you can see here, I have deck once. Let me actually move chat here. Like this. So I have deck called once. I can open it and then start reviewing my cards. And as I go through my cards, I will continue being in the deck once until I finish it. And then once I finish it, it's going to say, okay, you're done. Then you need to actively go to the main window and go to a different deck. So what this means is that you get to section off your different cards so that they don't mishmash together. So you can have a deck for memorizing Unicode hex codes. Yes, I do that. A deck for Morse code, a deck for Japanese, a deck for programming related stuff, a deck for hotkeys, a deck for, I can continue. So basically you can have a deck for each type of thing that you're learning. The big benefit of having multiple decks is, yes, first of all, the fact that you can separate things out, so you can kind of engross yourself into learning this single thing and then continue on later. Wow, this is kind of not very convenient to look at. Let's do it this way. But the actual reason to be making decks is because decks can have different settings. For example, in this deck, I take 9 new cards every day. The actual difference, though, is the learning steps, basically how long it takes for you to learn a card, and the display order, which means how are the new cards sorted and given to you. So as you add new cards, they're sequential. You can choose sequential, basically give me new cards as I add them, or you can say random cards, give me random new cards. Even if like I just added a new card, if it got randomized and picked, give me that one. So you can change multiple different options, and also desired retention. I don't necessarily recommend changing it from the default when you start out. Later on you can figure out if it is something that you want to change. Unking most definitely has a video about it. I probably watched it also. So this is also something you can change, as well as many other stuff. So The main reason for you to be making multiple different decks is because they can have different options. And that is exactly what I do. The once deck is basically default settings, let's call them that. They're not at all default, I changed them a lot, but they're default for me. So I only see the card once, and once I am ready, it moves on to the next stage kind of immediately. I only need to like learn the card once, I guess. Step is different in that it takes another step. I need to press good on a card twice for it to go to the next stage. And freq, it stands for frequent, also has two steps, like step, but the desired retention is 1% higher. So I see the cards in this deck pretty significantly more often than in once or step. So freq is for cards that are mostly specifically memorization. Stuff like me memorizing ASCII codes of characters, Unicodes of characters, there were more and I'm forgetting what else is like very, very precise, like colors, like hex colors that I use. So basically stuff that doesn't really have rhyme or reason to it, you just have to memorize it most of the time. So I want to be seeing cards in this deck more often to make sure I don't forget them, because it's like more important that I don't forget them than in these decks. But this wasn't my layout until just recently. I had around 7 decks, as I told you. Decks separated by what it is about. A deck for hotkeys, a deck for programming, etc. I told you how after you finish a deck, you have to specifically go back to the main menu and then search for another deck and open it. This kind of like compiles, let's say that. If you have around 7 decks, you have to switch to a different deck 7 times every day. And okay, maybe you finish your session for today. Well, the thing about it, after you do your session, you will answer again on some cards, basically meaning that, oh, I didn't remember this card, I want to see it again. And then you see these red things that you need to take care of, or at least very much should, on 7 different decks. So you need to switch 14 decks now, or however many. So you end up switching decks a lot. And what I noticed is that I only ever used 3 different types of settings for my decks. So freq, once, and step. And there were basically multiples of the same exact settings in multiple different decks, because I was trying to separate them by meaning. So I kind of compressed them, and now they just are separated by settings. And all the different cards are mishmashed inside. And this way, I only ever need to switch different decks 3 times rather than 7. I have a bit less control about which new cards I get every day. So all of these are like random cards rather than sequential. And sometimes sequential makes more sense. But I found that this kind of trade-off was worth it for me to have to switch less. Another benefit is that once I am in a deck, I can continue on and on and on and on. I won't have to switch to a deck only to do something like 3 cards. That's kind of annoying. Because, like, an entire switch for something this small. No, like I'll usually have a healthy amount of cards to do all in a single deck, and I can focus on without having to context switch by switching to a different deck for a long time. So yeah, I do recommend first experimenting with decks, maybe having quite a lot of decks. I used to have around 20, I think, which is crazy, by the way. Okay, maybe I'm lying, actually. Let's say 10. 12. I feel like it was around 12. Like, I had quite a lot of decks, basically. Then I found that it wasn't a good workflow for the exact reason that I'm mentioning right now, because you have to switch between 12 decks then. It was really, really annoying. And then I started making note types for all the different for all the different subjects. So for example, if I look at Fish FC, you'll see that I use HTML to add a header at the top, so that when I see the card, I see the context of the question. Like, oh, this is a question about fish shell. Or maybe this is a question about Morse code, which is probably what is the Morse code of this letter or this character. Or Rust. This is a Rust question. So this is how I do this, rather than having a billion decks. There's an option of subdecks, which I should be using actually. Yeah, so there's an option of subdecks, but annoyingly Anki does not display the subdeck that you are in, which is very annoying. Actually, never mind, I shouldn't be using subdecks. Well, let me explain in just a second. So, Anki does not display the name of the subdeck that you're currently studying. So, if all of these were subdecks of a bigger deck, of like a parent deck, I wouldn't know the context. So, it still needs to do something like this, or have to have a bunch of parent decks and then enter them one by one, very annoyingly. Very often having to study like two cards in a single deck. So that's why I used note types instead. It's not a good solution. It just sucks that Anki works the way it works, making me have to use this like solution. Okay, so I mentioned subdecks. Let's create ASDF. And in ASDF, we can create FDSA. It is now a subdeck. Whoa! The nice thing about it is that if I want to study ASDF, FDSA will be included. And however many subdecks I add to ASDF, once I click on ASDF, I will be learning all the cards from all these subdecks. So my problem of, oh god damn it, I need to switch between different subdecks, like, gets removed if I just use one huge deck with all the subdecks. And considering that I use my file note type idea, it's like perfect. I just click on a single deck and I don't have to worry about it ever. But now I remember that options work annoyingly, like on parent decks. So ASDF uses once here, right? FDSA, let's make it use frec. And if I remember correctly, because I am studying ASDF, the options of FDSA will not be applied. The options of ASDF will be applied. I hope I'm wrong, and I'm thinking that I am actually. But this might be the case. I should figure that out. Should find that out. But one thing that I am like very sure about, say there is a limit of new cards on ASDF. And then FDSA also has a limit of new cards a day. So let's say FDSA has 4 and ASDF has 2. You will only be able to study 2 cards. So you click ASDF, you'll only be able to study 2 cards, even though FDSA is still fine to go for 2 more cards, because the limit was placed on ASDF, and it like keeps FDSA at the bay. Which now I'm realizing you could just solve by doing this. I haven't like done this in a while, so I'm like continuously impressed, like, oh right, I can do this, you know? So basically the new cards limit in my specific case doesn't matter because I'm using node types, but in yours it might actually matter, because by placing a limit on the parent deck, you might be annoying yourself by limiting the downer decks. Because by the way, you can still add cards to ASDF. You don't have to add cards to child decks. And then if I'm really hoping that I'm wrong, if you study the parent deck, I am hoping that the options of the sub deck are applied, which would make more sense, but I'm kind of like assuming that I'm wrong here. But I'll need to figure that out on my own, probably by asking ChatGPT again. Or maybe experimenting. I'm like not even sure how I would experiment this to find this out. I mean, yeah, reading the docs is the most reasonable solution, but where is that information? I have no clue. I've read Anki docs in the past, and they often don't answer my questions well enough. Alright. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something about Anki, or about an interesting way to handle special symbols, arrow keys, and numbers that you maybe will use in different way, in a way that makes more sense to you. And goodbye. Thanks for watching. Let me try to end my stream with a hotkey, but now using the different fucking control super. Just keep well, hello there. Yeah, okay, so let me try to press the hotkey. So control super tab, and when I press P, the stream will end. Yeah, so by the way, it won't even work because it has to be exact. Like tab plus P is 0, but tab alt P is nothing. See? It thought I pressed alt P here. Yeah, so it wouldn't even work. Yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching. Join the Discord server.